There was once a tortoise named Sami who lived at the edge of a great forest where the river met the meadow and the meadow met the hills. Sami was not unhappy, exactly. He had a fine shell, brown and patterned like old wood, solid and warm in the afternoon sun. He had a small burrow near the roots of an ancient fig tree. He had good water nearby and soft grass in the mornings. But Sami had a habit, a quiet, dangerous habit. Every single day, he would watch the other animals, and he would count all the ways he was not like them. In the mornings, he would watch the swallows. They cut through the pink sky like small dark arrows, looping and diving and spinning in ways that made even the clouds seem slow. They called to each other in bright, sharp voices, and their laughter scattered across the valley like seeds in the wind. Sami would stretch his neck from his shell, slowly as tortoise necks go, and stare up at them for a long time. "I will never do that," he thought. "I will never move like that. I will never be free like that." He would tuck his neck back in, just a little, and carry the thought with him for the rest of the day, heavy as mud on his shell. By mid-morning, the deer came to drink from the river. They moved like the river itself, fluid and quick and impossibly graceful. Their legs were long and light, their eyes wide and golden. When something startled them, they didn't run. They flew. 4 hooves became one beautiful motion, and in 3 heartbeats they had vanished into the tree line like they had never been there at all. Sami watched from the bank, half buried in the reeds. "I take 1 step every 3 seconds," he thought. "By the time I reach the water, the deer have already come and gone and returned home and eaten dinner." He sighed a slow tortoise sigh, which is the longest and most patient kind of sigh there is, and he waded in alone. In the afternoons, the otters played. The otters were the worst. Not because they were cruel, but because they made everything look so effortless. They tumbled down mudslides, wrestled in the shallows, balanced pebbles on their chests while floating on their backs, and generally behaved as if life were one long, hilarious game they had invented just for themselves. They sometimes invited Sami to join because otters invite everyone to everything. "Come on, Sami, come down the slide." "I would break something," Sami said carefully. "Then we'll be careful. I think the timeline is different for me." The otters laughed, not unkindly, and went back to their tumbling, and Sami watched from the bank and felt a familiar ache, that quiet, pressing weight of being exactly what you are and wishing, just a little, that you were something else entirely. One evening, when the sky had turned the deep orange of a ripe mango, Sami climbed, slowly, very slowly, to the top of a flat rock near the river. He did this sometimes just to sit, just to look at the world from a slightly higher place and feel slightly less like the smallest, slowest, least remarkable creature in it. But that evening, someone else was already on the rock. It was an old elephant named Baba. She was enormous, and gray and deeply wrinkled, like a landscape that had lived 1,000 years. She sat, or rather, stood, because elephants do not sit, they simply settle, with her trunk resting on a boulder and her eyes half closed, watching the sunset as if she had seen 10,000 sunsets and still found everyone worth watching. Sami climbed up beside her. This took quite a long time. Baba waited without impatience. "You seem troubled," Baba said, without looking at him. Her voice was low and slow, the way very deep rivers sound. "I'm fine," Sami said, which is what you say when you are not fine, but are not sure how to explain it. Baba said nothing. She was very good at silence. Elephants carry more silence in them than almost any creature alive. And in that silence, Sami found himself speaking anyway. "I was watching the swallows today," he said, "and the deer, and the otters, and I keep thinking that everyone else was given something I wasn't. Speed or wings or grace or joy. And I'm slow. I'm heavy. I barely get from one place to the next before the day is over." He paused. "I don't know what I have that's worth anything." Baba was quiet for a long time. The sun slipped lower. A frog called once from the reeds and then thought better of it. Then Baba said, "Do you know what happened to this valley 3 rainy seasons ago?" Sami thought. "The flood?" "The flood," she said. "The river rose in one night. The swallows were safe. They flew. The deer ran to high ground. The otters swam because of course they swam. They find floods mildly entertaining." A trace of warmth moved across her old face. "But the smaller creatures, the beetles, the mice, the young, ones who didn't know yet which way was high ground, they were frightened. They didn't know where to go." She paused. "Who led them?" Sami frowned. "I did," he said slowly. "I knew the way to the ridge. I'd walked it 100 times, slowly, and I knew every step of it." "Because you are slow," Baba said. "You had noticed. Every root, every stone, every narrow passage. You had learned the ground. And because you were steady, not rushed, not panicked, the frightened ones trusted you. They followed your shell through the dark water, and they arrived safely." Sami was quiet. "The swallows could not have led them," Baba continued. "They fly. They don't know the ground. The deer would have outrun everyone. The otters would have treated it like a game and lost the beetles somewhere in the second bend." She looked at him then, with those ancient amber eyes. "You are not a swallow, Sami. You were never supposed to be. The forest did not make a failed swallow when it made you. It made a tortoise, on purpose, with intention, with care. Your slowness is not the absence of speed. It is a different relationship with the world. You feel it, you learn it, you carry it. The last light of the sun touched the river and made it gold. Every creature in this forest," Baba said, "spends some part of its life wishing it were another. The swallows envy the fish who never falls. The deer envy the turtle who cannot be chased. Even I," she smiled, just slightly, "even I have stood here and wished I were small enough to move quietly through a crowd without being seen." Sami stared at her. "You have?" "Of course. Wanting to be other than you are is not a flaw. It is the ache of being alive and paying attention. But there is a difference," she said, "between noticing the beauty in others and deciding that their beauty is proof of your lack. Those are 2 very different walks." That night, Sami returned to his burrow beneath the fig tree. He lay in the dark and listened to the sounds of the forest settling into sleep. The crickets, the river, the distant hoot of an owl, who had no idea how lucky it was to be an owl. And, for the first time in a long time, he did not fall asleep comparing. He thought instead about the flood, about the beetles who had gripped the wet ground behind him, following his slow, deliberate steps, about how, in that moment, every inch of his slowness had been exactly what was needed. He thought about his shell, that brown, patterned thing he had so often wished were wings, and how it had sheltered him in storms, how it had given the little chameleon something to hide beside when the hawk circled, how it had been, in ways he had never bothered to count, a kind of home not just for himself, but for others. He pulled his head gently inside it that night, and for once, it did not feel like shrinking. It felt like arriving. In the mornings after, that Sami still watched the swallows, he still saw the deer drink at the river, he still watched the otters tumble and laugh, and he still felt the beauty of those things. That particular bittersweet wonder of watching a creature do exactly what it was made for. But he no longer watched them and felt less. He watched them, the way you watch a sunrise, not wishing you were the sun, just grateful to be alive in the same world where such light is possible. And slowly, because everything Sami did was slow, and that was exactly as it should be, he began to notice the small things that only a creature close to the ground ever sees. The way the dew collected in the fold of a leaf just before the morning burned it off. The way the ants rebuilt after the rain with something that could only be called faith. The way the fig tree's roots, beneath the soil, were so tangled with the roots of every other tree that you could not say where one ended and another began. He saw these things because he was slow enough to see them, and the forest was richer for it. Stop comparing yourself to others, because what feels like a weakness may actually be your greatest strength. When you focus on what you lack, you miss the unique value you bring. But when you accept who you are, you begin to see how your qualities can help not only yourself, but others too.